January 13th. This is a meeting of the Peoria County Board. Would everyone please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? Sorry, my gavel isn't louder. Madam Clerk.
Roll call, please.
While we're doing roll call, you got it?
Member Daly?
Here.
That's what I wanted to get done.
I jumped the gun.
No, you're fine. You're good.
Okay. 18 present.
Members of the body, can I get a motion to allow Linda to participate, Mr. Fennell and Mr. Rosenbaum on the second? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Linda, you're in.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes. Mr. L. Sasser on the first and Ms. Relaford on the second. I steered her into it. Are there any additions or corrections? One more time. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Daly?
Aye.
Eighteen ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Next would be citizens' remarks. I did not have any turned in to me.
We would be at the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please? Mr. Renaud and Mr. Dillon on the second. Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd like to pull C16.
C16. The chairman has requested that his own appointments be pulled after we vote on all the other items, assuming that 16 is the only one we're pulling. Mr. Renaud has asked that he be appointed to the Triad Committee, and I have gladly accepted that, so that will be the name we'll amend to this list. But let's go back to, are there any other items under consent people want to pull? Wow. Saved. Okay, so we'll be voting on everything but chairman's appointments. Please vote.
Ms. Daly?
Aye.
17 ayes, 1 nay. You'll give me just a minute to type that in.
Thank you. Now, could I get a motion as amended? Ms. Williams, the chairman's appointments plus Mr. Renaud to the Triad Board. Thank you, Mr. Fennell, on the second. Ms. Pastisha? Well, you were offering for a second. Is that what you were? Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Ms. Daly?
Aye.
Let's see. Ms. Williams and Chairman Rand? 18 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
They're rolling along. We'd be at zoning ordinance and resolutions. Case ZBA 2021-000039, petition of David J. Russell and Kim D. Bryan Russell, a special use request from section 20-5.5.2.2.c of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for overnight accommodations provided that they meet the requirements set forth in section 7.8 and provided that no more than 5 rooms or suites of rooms are rented, and rooms are not rented for a period of more than 14 days. The petitioner proposes to provide overnight accommodations on a short-term rental basis through the websites Airbnb and VRBO. The parcel is located in Medina Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval with restrictions. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon, on the motion to approve, and a second from Ms. Groves Allison. Thank you. Any comments? Mr. Elsasser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For about an hour today, I was on the phone with a man who was a former constituent of mine, and it doesn't really matter where they're from in the county, but he does now live along this road, River Beach Road down here, and I'm not sure if this one was on River Beach Road or not, but he had four very valid concerns, and I think we maybe need to look into them in the future. And then one of them is the density or the number of these potential Airbnbs that would be right next to each other.
Brian, just for the record, we have to make sure that we don't introduce any facts that were not part of the fact-finding discussion.
Okay,
held
let's
at
vote on
ZBA.
this, and then can I take the floor?
That would be fine,
That'd
but
be
I
fine.
just want to make sure.
Because
that
I'm going to vote for it. I mean, that's not
Okay.
a problem. I just wanted to. That's fine.
I usually get tapped on the shoulder by counsel.
I'll wait till
but
after we vote on
I'm
it.
going to beat her to the punch tonight. Okay, so any other questions? Ms. Pastusha?
I was just looking at this versus the one that we voted on back in November, and I noted that one was the Zoning Board of Appeals recommend denial. Are we allowed to talk about the difference between these two and why the Zoning Board denied that one but they approved this one?
Ms. Pastusha, would you ask your question again?
So the case that we voted on in November, the Zoning Board of Appeals denied. It was an Airbnb case also, but they denied that one. And there's a bunch of similar cases that have been approved, and I just wanted to know what were some of the reasons for the denial in that case versus the approvals in this case.
Mr. Dillon, or maybe Mr. Braun? I'm happy to. Mr. Dillon?
I can answer, hopefully, most of your questions in that regards, and if not, we have staff here that can. So, the case, all 4 of these cases, or 3 of these properties, or 4 of them, they came to us via a complaint that was filed on them. So, staff initially recommended on the one that was denied last month a recommendation of approval. That did have quite a few objectors that showed up at the meeting, and the ZBA was kind of taking into considerations, they called the question, and so they voted on it without adding the restrictions. So we added that fence restriction that was a concern of the neighborhood. So we overturned it in our hearing to move it forward. But the staff recommendation from the get-go on all these was that it met our zoning ordinances to bring forward. So the attorney, Mr. McCarthy, I believe he's represented that case and is also representing these three clients here tonight. He is present tonight, and one of the petitioners in this cases are present. But really, I think after that, and I'm speculating at this point, is that ZBA saw that the board approved it and we approved that, and there was no concerns being addressed by neighbors. I know we've gotten a couple emails since that were not read into the record of that. So really the only difference was was objectors there, and they felt that they just voted out without adding the restriction. We add an extra restriction and move forward. These have the same restrictions as the last one, but not the fence restriction. And then I'm happy to answer Brian's question when we get to that.
Kate?
Have there been any complaints on these properties?
Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there was some questions, but
On this property, there were no complaints, and actually the next door neighbors consented, and they said that they have no problem.
You good? Okay, anyone else? All right, please vote.
Member Daley?
I really am having a very hard time hearing what people are saying. So this is the vote on the 00039, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, I vote aye.
Thank you, Linda.
18 ayes.
I prefer to wait until after number 3, if that's okay.
Okay, and I'm going to ask council to clarify so that there's no misunderstanding. We
right.
can still debate these things, but we just don't want to
I'm not debating anything. The man he wanted to send a letter in. He said he was going to send it in for citizens' remarks, and I was kind of surprised that he didn't, so I just
Okay.
felt like I would convey. And he's not against any of these three, the
Okay.
first three, so I just wanted to let you know that too.
Let me ask council to help clarify what I commented on earlier.
I wanted to clarify why we were answering some questions and not others. So as you guys know, we can't have new evidence that comes in. This is a review process coming out of the ZBA that actually heard the evidence. You guys can still deliberate. So that's why, discussion about the issue can happen amongst yourselves, but we can't get into bringing outside facts or information. And so I just wanted to clarify, that's why we were hesitating on one front, but allowing some questions on another front.
Thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Dillon, I was going to get another one on the floor. Do you have a comment?
yeah, so I'll just kind of address some of what you brought up
Well,
now,
no,
Brian.
we're
but-
going to wait till after number 3.
Well, just for the sake of everybody here, in regards to, I know that there was communications and concerns about the county board possibly addressing concerns about density and everything else, or fees, or some sort of track record and all that stuff. That has been discussed. I mean, me and Kathy have talked it. She's researched multiple counties in the state of Illinois to see what best practices is. I know I talked to Member Daley to see about even other states, what best practices are in these. So we are going to look into it possibly. Right now, there's only 10 in the entire county, Peoria County. It just happens to be that these 4 are on a river beach. Kathy does have a map, if need to be, where we can show the density. These currently are what the closest is 0.75 miles. Roughly right now, 0.7 miles. I believe the city has no more than 3% in an area and a 0.25 mile restriction for density. So there are some concerns that have been addressed that we might have to look forward to in the future, but currently this is what we have going forward. So I know I've had multiple questions about that this week addressed to me because I'm the chair of the committee, and the committee is open to hear and listen to constituents and everybody else to try to address the concerns.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Pastusha.
I'm going to ask the same thing for all of these. Were there any objections, and have there been ever any complaints?
Let me get the item on the floor, and then
Oh,
it
I'm
would be
sorry.
proper for you to ask that. Could I get a motion on, we're going to get a big, long reading here. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Item number 2 is case number ZBA 2021-000040, petition of Briscoe Financial LLC, a special use request from section 20-5.5.2.2.c of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for overnight accommodations provided that they meet the requirements set forth in section 7.8, and provided that no more than 5 rooms or suites of rooms are rented and rooms are not rented for more than a period of 14 days. The petitioner proposes to provide overnight accommodations on a short-term rental basis through the websites Airbnb and VRBO. The parcel is located in Chillicothe Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval with restrictions. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve Mr. Dillon on the first and Dr. Blair on the second? Discussion. Ms. Kate Pastusha.
So, were there any objections, and have there been any complaints on this property?
Mr. Dillon.
We had 2 consents on this, and I wouldn't really say it was an objection. This is the one that Mr. John wrote in a letter with concerns about. And this property here, actually the neighbor was one of the consenters and said that lived next to the property for the last 2 years, and they've been very good neighbors. So that's what we had.
Anyone else?
Chairman, if I may, just
Sure.
another clarification. We had a little interim between these 2 items, or I guess I would couch it as a policy discussion. Just a reminder that when you're voting on the items, you're only able to take into consideration what's coming up from the ZBA and Land Use Committee. So certainly you can also have policy discussions, but you kind of like a judge has to, might hear something and make sustain an objection, they have to take that out of their mind. When you're voting, you kind of have to take that out of your mind and vote on the item in front of you.
Going to school every day. Thank you. Are we all done? All right, on this resolution, please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
Chairman Rand? Didn't register you. There you go. That's 18 ayes.
Thank you.
Next is item number 3, case number ZBA 2021-000041, petition of Holloway Holdings LLC, a special use request from section 20.20-5.5.2.2.c of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for overnight accommodations provided that they meet the requirements set forth in section 7.8, and provided that no more than 5 rooms or suites of rooms are rented, and rooms are not rented for more than a period of more than 14 days. The petitioner proposes to provide overnight accommodations on a short-term rental basis through the websites Airbnb and VRBO. The parcel is located in Chillicothe Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval with restrictions. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon on the motion to approve and the second. Thank you, Dr. Blair. Any discussion? Ms. Pastusha.
Same question.
0 consents and 0 objections.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Any complaints? 0 and 0, okay.
So it's 0, 0, 0, no consent, no dissent, and no complaint. Okay, gotcha. Anyone else? All right, please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
18 ayes. Item number 4 is case number ZBA 2021-000042, Petition of Randy F. Coors, a rezoning request from C1 Neighborhood Commercial to R2 Medium Density Residential. The petitioner proposes to rezone parcels of 0.70 acres and 0.50 acres in order to create a buildable home site and bring an existing residential use into conformance. The parcels are located in Medina Township, and the Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval. The Land Use Committee concurs.
A motion to approve from Mr. Dillon and a second from Mr. Rosenbaum. Thank you, Paul. Ms. Pastucia? No questions? Okay. Anyone have any questions for the committee chair? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
18 ayes, 0 nays.
Mr. Elsesser? Sure.
Well, first of all, this man was not asking for a no vote tonight on any of these. He just wanted us to look down the road, and Mr. Dillon and Kathy and the Planning and Zoning Department are already well ahead of, or 2 steps ahead of me already, because they're already looking into the density issue, and he asked what the city of Peoria's policy was, and, you know, not that we have to follow what they're gonna do, but you know, I appreciate the fact that you're already looking into that. He asked this question. I thought it was a good question because, you know, when you go into a motel in Peoria, you do pay, is it 9% or 7%?
Well, there's an HRA tax on top of the state tax, on top of the
Right.
public safety tax, on
Right,
top
what-
of the
Right.
city tax, so
Right.
yes.
So he did ask the question, and I think it's a good question, and I'm not sure how I feel about it one way or the other, but, you know, it's cheaper for the people to stay in there if you have 2 or 3 families than it is in a motel, plus you have a place to cook and
Sure.
place to walk around, and so why wouldn't you charge, you know, that kind of a fee or a tax so the county can gain some revenue? So, like I said, I'm not for or against that, but I think it's worth looking into. And then he also asked the question, you know, there's a minimum of, I believe, of 8 people in a lot of these that are allowed at any one point in time as far as spending the night. He asked now if they have a big cookout and a party, and there's 60 or 70 people in there, is the septic tank and the sewer public service, or is it able to accommodate that? So I thought he raised some very good points, and he said he was going to send a letter in for citizens' remarks, so I just felt like I should at least convey some of his concerns, and it sounds like they're already a step ahead of me.
Thank you. I can just tell you that the county doesn't have the authority to add a sales tax to the use of the building.
Right.
As a pro-business member of the body, I'm not sure I'm looking for more things to tax.
No, I'm not either. I just wanted to convey what he said.
So I think that's kind of uphill. As to the other ones, I look forward to hearing from land use what
Right.
their fact-finding
Yeah.
efforts are, because it has been a very different discussion in the city of Peoria than we're having here.
Regarding the tax, I was just conveying what he said.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad you clarified that. Mr. Fennel?
Also, the point, him sending a letter, he sent a letter to the clerk, and the clerk passed it on to both chairman and myself. So he did send a letter.
It was Roger John? Yeah. Madam Clerk?
Item number 5, case number ZBA 2021-000043, petition of Four Creeks LLC, a special use request from section 20-5.1.3.3.d of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for meteorological towers, provided that the conditions in sections 5.14.3-3 are met in the A1 Agricultural Preservation Zoning District. The petitioner requests to install a temporary meteorological tower to record and measure wind data for up to 3 years. The parcel is located in Millbrook Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon on the first, and then the second is from Mr. Elsaster. Mr. Dillon.
I just want to recognize Kelly O'Brien with ConnectGen. The petitioner is here. And if you do have questions that have not been addressed, staff does have a PowerPoint that was presented to committee that if you need be show. But this is basically a study. It's basically take an F-150 truck. It has a trailer on the back, drive it across the road into the farm field, and it's about under 200 feet, I believe. And it cranks up. It's got some cable wires with bird gauges on it, or those orange circles. And then it basically has a bunch of instruments that will collect wind data to see whether or not Peoria County would be a good place to put some wind towers. So petitioner is here, and we do have a PowerPoint if need be, that if the board would like further answers. It was presented at the Land Use Committee.
Mr. Elsesser?
Would it be appropriate for me to ask her to stand up? I mean, she spent hours and
Sure.
hours and days, even many days in Peoria County so far.
Happy to recognize
Kelly?
someone. Hi, Kelly. Welcome.
She's from Texas. She's from Texas. So
Welcome.
She,
I'm sure you feel right at home. Well, Brian is a good host. Did you say a Ford truck?
Any truck with a hitch, I believe, can pull this trailer across the...
there's a trailer getting pulled. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What a terrible thing to do with a truck. Okay. Any other questions? I think we got a couple of these tonight. Mr. Dillon?
I should just clarify, this is just a study. This is not approving a wind tower. That would be a whole nother siting process that would have to go on. But this is a study, and this is the first step. And as Mr. Elsesser said, the company's been here communicating with local partners. So this is just a study, because there was confusion, I think, with some initial people that came to the initial hearing that this was a wind farm. This is just for the study.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
18 ayes. Next is item number 6. Case number ZBA 2021-000044. Petition of Four Creeks LLC, a special use request from section 20-5.1.3.3.d of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for meteorological towers provided that the conditions in sections 5.14.3-3 are met in the A1 Agricultural Preservation Zoning District. The petitioner requests to install a temporary meteorological tower to record and measure wind data for up to 3 years. The parcel is located in Princeville Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon and Mr. Elsesser on the second. Any comments on this item? Seeing none, please vote.
Ms. Daly?
Aye.
18 ayes. Next is item number 7, case number ZBA 2021-000045. Petition of Four Creeks LLC, a special use request from section 20-5.1.3.3.d of the Unified Development Ordinance. This section allows for meteorological towers provided that the conditions in section 5.14.3-3 are met in the A1 Agricultural Preservation Zoning District. The petitioner requests to install a temporary meteorological tower to record and measure wind data for up to 3 years. The parcel is located in Brimfield Township. The Zoning Board of Appeals recommends approval. The Land Use Committee concurs.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon on the motion to approve and Mr. Elsesser on the second. Any additional comments? Mr. Elsesser.
I guess the word temporary kind of gives it away, but just in case you don't realize that these will actually be taken down, after 1, 2, 3 years, up to 3 years. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
18 ayes. Item number 8, case number ZBA 2021-000048, petition of Peoria County, a map amendment to zone parcels of approximately 53.24 acres and 36.19 acres, totaling 2 parcels of approximately 89.43 acres to A2 agriculture. The petitioner requests a map amendment to correct the error resulting from the subject parcels not currently having a zoning classification. The parcel is located on an island within the Illinois River in Chillicothe Township.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Fennel on the second. Mr. Dillon?
I can have staff if anybody wants to ask questions too, but this is correcting a long time error. We had these parcels on this island that had never been zoned, had gone through our GIS updates, our land use updates, and they had never been zoned. So this is getting them in compliance. An agricultural zoning is consistent with other islands that are on the river. I know that this was important to Chillicothe and Mr. Fennel, his district, to get this corrected. So this was correcting, basically we had 2 parcels that were unzoned for as long as our records go back with no identity. So this is bringing them up into compliance.
Mr. Fennel?
Thank you. This area is near and dear to me because it's my backyard. I look at this almost every morning. I think most every year I've shared a picture of the riverfront and maybe a sunrise from my house. So this will protect that natural area of that island, keeping it so that all of the people that use the riverfront, whether the boat launch or whether it's the city park, the watching station that they just put in for the Eagle Tower, everybody coming there for breakfast with their coffee in the morning or noon or in the evening. It's just one of the few places that you really can get to see nature up close like that, and it's a beautiful sight. So I'm glad the zoning took this on, and I'm glad that the agricultural is the type of zoning because I think it'll protect the natural resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elsesser?
Well, the old saying is the wheels of government turn rather slowly, but with regard to this effort, I'm really impressed with our staff and the state's attorney's office, and just Mr. Fennel, appreciate your efforts, and all the constituents and the people from Chillicothe and the different groups that got involved, and I'm just really impressed with them. And I did want to introduce one of my constituents who was very concerned about this 2 months ago, Mike Cruz, who's sitting right back here. So
Welcome, sir.
he was very concerned and gave me a call, and I'm just very impressed with the speed of this matter, how it was resolved.
Well, Mr. Fennel?
Since he mentioned Mike Cross, might mention he used to be the Park District President for Shore Acres, and he got the historical marker for Shore Acres, and it's right across from this river island, too.
Nice. Nice. Mr. Dillon?
Last thing, I just want to thank Kathy and Andrew and her staff. This was a very busy month, as you can see from land use perspective, and once again, always top-notch and professional, and got many questions thrown at them in different directions. So in this last case, just I explained it at the hearing, a little different. There was a miscommunication in the posting, so that's why we had a special meeting prior to this meeting to put it on, even though it was heard this morning. So that's not typical to our process, but since there was an error in the posting in the paper, we felt it was necessary to keep the process moving. So thanks to our staff, as always, for everything that they do.
Anyone else? Well, job well done, Andrew, Kathy, thank you. And for the rest of us, please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
18 ayes. Next is item number 9, a joint resolution from your Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee and your Ways and Means Committee, recommending approval of a budget amendment to the FY 2022 Peoria County Election Commission budget in the amount of $1,244,838 for the purchase of a new voting system and upgrades to the existing electronic poll books.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve? Mr. Fennel and Ms. Groves Allison on the second. Mr. Ricker.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to enter an amendment or request for an amendment. After this passed through both committees, Ways and Means and the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Committee, we did identify that there was one additional cost that was not captured, and it was the cost for label printers at the poll books. So that adds an incremental price of $6,370. So the amendment is to increase the upgrade to e-poll books line item on the resolution from $326,734 to $333,104. And that would increase the total from $1,244,838 to $1,251,208. So that's the amendment I am making on the floor.
Thank you. And Mr. Fennel on the second. Any questions? So we have a motion on the floor that has been amended. The item for discussion is the motion as amended. Mr. Rosenbaum.
This is just an informational question. How often do we, or does the Election Commission upgrade their stuff? And
Great question.
is the money, have we been planning on this, so the money's there, or was this one of the
Mr. Ricker's
thing that
gonna
we had to come up with the money?
comment for you. So Mr. Ricker?
I guess my first ask is, do we need to vote on the amendment? And then I'd like to have a discussion on the resolution, some details for our audience. Or, I don't know what's the protocol.
You're correct. You've got the rule correct. So let us vote on the motion as amended, and then we'll come back to discussing that.
So vote on the amendment.
Yes. Any questions on the motion as amended?
The amendment.
Motion to amend. Hold my hand. All right, please vote. Motion to amend.
Member Daley?
Aye.
Member Dillon? Oh, there you go. 17 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay, so Mr. Ricker.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that vote. What I'd like to do is, this is an important upgrade that the Election Commission is doing, that it does impact all of the voters in Peoria County. Just as Mr. Rosenbaum was asking a question about some details, I'd like to ask Mr. Bride from the Election Commission to give us an overview of why we're making the changes now and a little bit overview of the system, if we can do that.
Sure. Where is Tom?
Get him on a microphone. Yes. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, so the current system we have was purchased in late 2005. The first election was in 2006, so it's a 15 years with the current system. We identified and started having conversations several years ago at the Election Commission that we were getting towards the end of life on that system, and we are at the end of life on that system. We can no longer get new parts. We've actually got software that is unsupportable. So it is definitely time for a replacement of the current voting system. I think we've been very happy with 15 years. That's a pretty good run on the equipment. And actually, some of it's in pretty good shape. It's just really end of life on the software side and some other things that we're looking into. We started a process to replace that system this summer. We went out for an RFP in August. We received 2 responses. We sent the RFP to all 4 vendors in Illinois that are certified. We received 2 responses. We had an evaluation committee put together. There were bipartisan members of the Election Commission Board, 2 members of the county board, The election commission staff, we had a member of the county IT to come in to give us some feedback, especially on the software, and a lot more expertise in RFPs than we had. And then we had legal counsel there helping guide in that. We did an initial evaluation of the written responses to the RFP, and then we invited both of the vendors in for in-person presentations in front of the evaluation committee. At the end of that, we did an evaluation. We had 12 categories, weighted at different, obviously some things were weighted heavier than other, but we had a unanimous decision for the Hart Intercivic Verity voting system. It is actually the same vendor we have, but it's an upgraded version, their newest version out there. Actually, probably the newest version of voting system in the market. So at that point, that recommendation went to the Election Commission Board, which approved it in November. During that process of evaluating the voting system, we realized that we didn't want to take a step back from what we were doing in a polling place now, which is really a ballot on demand. Everybody in here has voted. You go up, they give you the little access code, you go over and put that in. That's assigning your ballot. So this is a paper-based system, but we didn't want to take the step back and not have a ballot on demand. So in conversations with our existing e-poll book vendor, we were able to upgrade the poll books to provide that ballot on demand. We could have used the voting vendor. They have that system, and we'll use that for early voting. But there was a significant cost savings using that by upgrading the electronic poll books. So that was the process we went through to select the new voting system, and during that process, evaluating and realizing that if we upgraded the electronic poll books to do ballot on demand, we can have a much better system. We're not taking a step back, at least in the process. I know there's a lot of discussion. We're taking a step back by going to paper, but the voting industry election administration is all going to a paper-based. There's a lot more. There's some more auditability than we have. Now, we have a paper backup, but it's a sealed container. With this system, every voter's ballot's going to look the same. It doesn't matter if you vote at home at your kitchen table, if you vote early, if you vote on election day. Even if you're a disabled voter, you'll use a ballot marking device, but it'll print out a ballot that'll look the exact same as everybody else, and they all go into the same type of scanner. The vote by mail will go into a bigger scanner, but it's the same process for all the voters. So that was a little over. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but.
I'd like you to address Mr. Rosenbaum's question. His question, if I understand him, was you answered a question he didn't ask, which is we put a system in 05 or 06. This last says this long. And he's trying to say, well, how many years are we going to get out of this one? I think that's your question.
Sure. We've during the negotiations, we've asked for 10 years of cost certainty for license in support of this. I think that's a very reasonable expectation. It wouldn't surprise me if we could go beyond that, but we're definitely anticipating a 10-year window with the system.
The other question is, and it's not so much for me, but for our audience at home that's listening, was the money in the budget already for that? Have we been saving up for it?
It's a very good question. Mr. Sorrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom and I have had multiple conversations. It is an expense that we did anticipate. We did not appropriate it in the FY22 budget because when you adopted the budget, they had not selected a vendor and we did not have a price at that point in time. We wanted to make sure that we were appropriating the correct amount of funds for this project. The recommendation that's in the resolution as amended here tonight will come from our Capital Improvement Fund, Fund number 62, and from the reserves of that fund. A portion of those reserves were originally seeded by general fund dollars. The majority of them are from public facility sales tax dollars. This is not a public facility sales tax expense, and so we will be applying the general fund, the original portion that was seeded from the general fund to this, and then once we finish the period 13 of FY21 and we're into the audit phase, we'll determine how much extra we need, and we'll come back and make a recommendation to move general fund dollars into Fund 62 to cover the difference between those numbers. That way we're using the correct source of funds throughout.
Dr. Blair and then Mr. Fennell.
Again, just to make sure our audience understands, can you describe what the e-poll book is and what it does?
So the electronic poll book is basically this situation is a Windows tablet. It allows us to check voters in at each in each polling place on election day. The main reason we have to have some type of electronic is because in Illinois, any election jurisdiction over 100,000 is required to have election day registration at every polling location. So in order to do that, there's a couple reasons. One is we want to be able to make sure that that person who comes in and registers, that we can actually make sure we get them the right ballot. We can precinct them to the right ballot, which can be extremely complicated in some jurisdictions, in some locations. I'll give you an example. It's not uncommon to have 10 ballot styles in one precinct. In Kickapoo Township, everything in the county seems to come together there. So making sure that they get the right ballot, but also it allows us to, that data, the voter registration data that the person voted is then pushed up into a cloud, and we can make sure that that person can't go from one polling place to another polling place and register. If they do, it'll say, look, you've already voted. It also allows us to push out, if you vote at 8 o'clock, if you're in line at 7, you voted at 8 o'clock the night before the election, that will show up on the poll books in the morning of the election. We're able to push that data out. It's a tool that allows us to do those kind of things. In this situation, it's a tool that allows us to do ballot on demand. So you will walk in with a voter, check in just like you would, you will sign. You'll go through the same process. You'll sign the label. There'll be a physical application. At that point, the last process, the one that's added, is to hit a button and it'll actually print that specific ballot for that voter, that paper ballot.
Mr. Fennell?
Thank you. Mr. Bride, you gave a presentation before, and I never caught it. Maybe you said it, but tonight you said that all of the mail-in ballots would go through a separate scanner than the others. And my question would be, if that's the case, will they be segregated and kept separate, or are they going to be thrown into the same basket when they're done?
So what I mean by that is the vote-by-mail ballots that come in, we use a commercial off-the-shelf scanner in our office just to handle the amount of them. And everything it'll be scanned in batches, and they're kept together. Once they're scanned, they're usually scanned in batches of 50 or 100. They're actually, a report is attached to them, and we can go back and pull those batches. There's not only a paper record of it, but there's also the images are all captured. So the reason we're using a different scanner is just so we can use a large, and it's actually more efficient, but it's a much bigger scanner so that we can scan several thousand ballots at a time, as opposed to the scanners in the polling places are really built to do one at a time.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Mr. Ricker?
Mr. Bride made a comment, and I'd like him maybe to elaborate a little bit on, you spoke of the e-book or the e-poll book is going to the cloud because it's managing voter registration. I'd like you to comment on the security around the actual voting information and the security that's tied to it, so our audience understands that we're not sending that to the cloud.
No, so the voter registration component, the information, the vast majority, which is public to begin with, is the only information that's bouncing back and forth. The paper ballot that comes out of the printer is what goes in the scanner. That's an air gap. The scanner, none of the voting system is ever connected to the internet. As a matter of fact, and Mr. Ricker was part of the presentation, the system we've got is extremely locked down that we couldn't even update the software if we wanted to in-house because it's locked down. But the ballot creation and the tabulation and the scanning of the ballots, that equipment is never connected to the internet. There's no part of the cloud. The only cloud part is that voter registration component that allows us to communicate with all the polling places at the same time.
Good question. Do I see a hand, Mr. Elsesser?
Well, I have to confess, at the committee, I was quite shocked when you said we're going back to a paper ballot. But you mentioned that we're about the only county around is using the.
We were one of only 2 counties in the state of Illinois that were all electronic. The vast majority of them are paper-based. Now, we all have to have an ADA compliant device, and those are all touchscreen. And there are some jurisdictions that have increased the number of those. So you may walk into a polling place. I know Knox County has a lot of those. And so you have people that are voting electronically there, but they are a paper-based system. The vast majority of the country is a paper-based system. There are some still DREs, but it's not common. I will also tell you this. There isn't a DRE system. There isn't a system in Illinois that would necessarily replace what we have now. There is systems that would print out a ballot from each one, but it's a different style ballot. It's not the same. The industry's really changed from 2005 and 6 when we purchased this. And paper for auditability and security and really a lot of ease of mind is where the industry is now.
Okay. And my second question is, at the committee, you talked about undervote and overvote. Now, is that part of the system, or is that just something that we're choosing to do?
No. Both federal and state requirements, they all require if you overvote. An overvote is when you select more than, if it's a vote for one, if you vote for more than one, that's considered an overvote. We haven't had a lot of those in Peoria County because you couldn't do it on the electronic equipment.
Right.
On a paper ballot, there's nothing stopping you, except when you put it into a scanner, it'll kick it back out and say you've overvoted. An undervote is when you vote for fewer choices. Let's say you don't vote for anybody in a race, or it's a vote for 3 and you vote for 2. That's considered an undervote. In that case, it will warn you, but it won't automatically kick it back out to you. And those are all not only federal, but they're state requirements.
Okay. I thought I must have misunderstood you, but I thought in the committee you said that if you do either one of those, that one of the judges comes over and tries to help you out. Is that right, or
So
maybe I misunderstood you?
The process we will have a judge close to the scanner in the case of an overvote or an undervote to explain to the voter their options. In an overvote, the vast majority of the time the voter will be issued a replacement ballot, and that one will be voided, since an overvote doesn't count. In an undervote, you can undervote, and that may be a decision the voters made. So that's more of an educational component for the voter that will have a judge explaining why it's saying you undervoted.
Okay. No, I appreciate that explanation, because I feel like people have the right to undervote if they want, and it shouldn't be anybody else's business, whether they do.
You would actually have the right to overvote. I don't know why you would want to, but you would actually have that right.
Okay.
But the overvote's canceling that vote on that race, so that warning is much stronger than just, hey, you're undervoting.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Pastucia.
So I'm old enough, I remember doing the connect the arrow voting before our current system. But we've had our current system for so long. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have never voted any other way. I'm just curious, can you kind of walk us through the voter process and what the experience for the voter is going to be when they go into the polling place now?
Sure. The first process, when you will walk up, you will state your name and your address. That process won't change. They're the same software in the poll books. We're upgrading them to print the ballot, but that process is the same as we've had since, well, in the county since 16 and the city since 2013. But at that point, the voter, instead of being given the little access code that they've been given, the little receipt, will actually be physically given a ballot. They'll take that ballot to a voting booth, and with a pin provided by us, a black or blue pin, we'll fill in the boxes. When they're done with that, they'll take it over. The voter will take it over and put it into a scanner. It'll scan it in. If there's nothing wrong with it, it drops straight into a locked, sealed ballot box, and the voter's done. If there is an issue, the overvote or the undervote, it'll warn. The overvote, it'll kick back out and really warn. But that's the process. It's really filling out a paper.
we understand that this is a big change for Peoria County, so we definitely have plans for a lot of voter education and outreach through the first election and really through the next couple of years because of that change. One of the nice things is I was here when we got the system we had now. That was a big change. The nice thing is filling out a piece of paper is pretty natural to people. The scanner is going to be the biggest issue, and explaining why we're making that change.
Okay, so we have a amended motion on the floor to cover an additional 6,000 and change. Is there any more question on the motion as amended? Seeing none, then.
We're back to that original. We voted on the amended amount that Steve put on the floor.
Yeah,
and
did
voted
I
on.
not say it right? Yeah, we're
Okay.
voting on the motion as amended.
As presented, okay.
As amended. It's the one with the extra $6,000.
We did that one already when Steve put the,
That
that was,
was to amend the motion. Now we need to vote on.
okay.
Got it.
The amendment, I put the additional on, so I shouldn't have done that, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so, okay. Well, I'll have to make note of that. Because, when he made the amendment, I put the reason was the increase.
Yes, that's true.
So that one was voted.
Just,
Then it goes back to the original.
no, it doesn't. It's the original as amended.
Okay, so maybe let me edit this. Okay, let me write that on here.
Ready? Good? All right, everyone, please vote.
I apologize for that.
No problem.
Member Daley?
Aye.
That's 16 ayes, 2 nays. Okay. We're at item 10, a resolution from your Health Committee recommending approval of a statement of policy of the County Board that is in the best interest of the County of Peoria to replace the current facilities housing the Peoria City County Health Department, the Sustainability and Recycling Services Department, the County Coroner's Office and Morgue, and the Office of the Regional Superintendent of Schools with a new Health and Human Service campus.
Let's see, Ms. Williams on the motion to approve and a second from Ms. Betty Duncan. How's that? Thank you. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott has prepared a presentation for us tonight that he's going to go through just to kind of talk about what happened in our committee. We hired, as you remember, a few months ago, we hired Farnsworth and River City Construction to oversee this project for us, and this is really kind of our first step in the process. So, Scott?
All right, thank you, Madam Chairman. So as the agenda briefing and the resolution states, this is a policy decision to renovate or replace the current health department campus and to consolidate several county offices and departments into a new facility. Your decision tonight is not an evaluation of the client or customer demographics of the offices impacted. It's not a decision to expand or contract any of the services that we would be delivering from either a campus perspective, a mobile perspective, or a hybrid perspective delivery model. It is not voting on a location either. Additionally, based on discussion that was at the committee meeting, it is also not a decision tonight to construct a new building or to renovate an existing building on a different property. What our design team has done is they've done a structural analysis of the current health department and the Gift Avenue complex. And both of those buildings do not meet code today. Both of those buildings are energy inefficient. Both of those buildings are inefficient from how we use the space. They looked at what it would take to from a remodeling or renovation standpoint, to bring those facilities up to code. And in the case of the current health department campus, do a small addition that would be necessary to consolidate some of the offices that are part of this conversation. And the estimated construction cost of that renovation project, which again includes that small addition, is equal to or 1 to 2% higher than actual new construction. Now, new construction can take the form of a new building, or it can take the form of renovating an existing building somewhere else. And that is a process that we will be going through. We've identified and are in the early stages of evaluating approximately 24 different properties. Some of them have buildings on them that could be remodeled and renovated. Some of them do not. We've created a matrix in which we will evaluate each one of those sites going forward. But we can't really complete that evaluation until we know how big a building we need. And we don't know how big a building we're going to need until we talk about what our customer demographics are and what services, the future state of our service delivery model is going to be. Those are all future policy discussions that we are going to have. So tonight really is about whether or not the current building is sufficient to continue to deliver the services that we need to deliver. And based on the information that was collected and evaluated by our evaluation team, we did it in a 4-part process that included looking at current services, whether or not they were mandated, essential, or value added, looking at a needs assessment of the building itself as it relates to the current service delivery model, looking at the actual physical plant itself, i.e. code compliance and other things, and then pulling all that together and doing the construction cost summary. The design team recommended that replacement is the most cost-effective option. Once this decision is made tonight, we will then engage in that next phase of the project that I just outlined and probably spent more time talking about than the actual renovate versus replace decision. So with that, Mr. Chairman or Ms. Williams, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we're all quiet. Oh, Mr. Rosenbaum, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, I just got a couple questions, and maybe this was explained in the committee, and I wasn't on the committee. But no questions on the health department. I understand that building. That the other ones that we're planning on moving in with them, will there be a cost savings because we're renting another place for them? Does the county already own the spot they are in, and do we have somewhere else if the county owns it? Is there another use for that office space once we move them out? Just some of, not so much the health department part, because I understand the building there. That's not an issue with me.
Great question, Mr. Rosenbaum. So the offices that have been evaluated, the Office of Sustainability and Recycling is actually already a tenant in the health department building, so they kind of fall under that umbrella. The Gift Avenue complex, which includes the coroner's office and morgue, and the Children's Advocacy Center division of the State's Attorney's Office, was also evaluated. That obviously is a property in the East Bluff that we've owned for a very, very long time. The prior use of that building was the juvenile detention center before we built the current one out on the west campus. That building is in need of repairs as well. It is not well suited whatsoever, really, for either one of those uses. The recommendation here is to consolidate the coroner's office and the morgue into the new campus, but to not include the Children's Advocacy Center. And that's because with conversations with the state's attorney's office and with state's attorney Hoos herself, she has some longer-term strategies that make more sense from a service delivery standpoint to be in a different facility than in the new consolidated campus. Next was Regional Office of Education. Beth's offices are scattered in 2 different locations in this building and also outside of this office. The portion that's outside is multifaceted. It includes the regional alternative high school that's at Wildlife Prairie Park currently. It also includes, she was previously pre-pandemic leasing space in an office park in Edwards, just south of the interstate where the post office is. It's been a long-term desire of hers to consolidate her spaces. And so this recommendation would do that, and for those offices that are here in the courthouse, would actually move them out of the courthouse and create vacant space here in the courthouse. The other offices that we did evaluate, and we are actually continuing to evaluate, as we talked a little bit about at the committee meeting, is the Election Commission. The Election Commission is a space we currently lease. We've invested roughly $700,000 or so in renovating that space for the Election Commission when it was created a number of years ago. One of the things that we will be doing in the next steps is continuing that evaluation, and then as we go through the process of determining, how big of a building we need and which sites can accommodate that building size, there will be a prioritization process that we'll go through. And so even though it's not specifically recommended to be consolidated here tonight, we continue to evaluate the Election Commission and see if potentially, depending on how things work out, it could get added to the new facility. That would, as Mr. Renaud stated in committee, that obviously would then decrease, even though it's a space we are leasing, it's a space that then we would not have to maintain going forward. So we'd eliminate that one.
Okay, on the coroner's office, the one that's in the old Gift Avenue. Okay, and we own that building right now?
We own the entire city block, including the building, yes.
Okay, if we move them out, do we have other stuff in there that other county services, or are we planning on getting rid of the property so we don't have to keep it up? What's kind of our...
It would, my preliminary recommendation would be to demolish that structure, and then there could be a policy discussion going forward about how we would use that entire city block, whether we would partner with the park district or ask the park district to maintain it. The building takes up roughly 1/3 of the block. The other 2/3, the neighborhood uses it as a pocket park. We mow it, we maintain it. Another option could be is to partner with a developer to essentially subdivide it and do new construction. That most likely in that neighborhood would be new low to moderate income housing. That would be market competitive for the neighborhood. But there could be other options out there as well. But that would be my preliminary recommendation. But obviously, it's too early to really say if that would be the final recommendation.
Ms. Bastuccia?
Since you're talking about other offices being considered for sake of not having multiple leases, did we ever consider the Veterans Commission office?
we did look at Veterans Assistance Commission. They just entered into a long-term lease not too long ago, and we've also made leasehold improvements there at their request. There is, I think it's something that we could evaluate at the same time. The Veterans Assistance Commission, through some quirks in the statute, has a little bit more independence than some of the other offices that we're looking at.
It was a good question, Kate. I was glad you asked it. Anyone else? Mr. Elsasser?
If we pass this tonight, and at the end of the day, say 6 months or 9 months from now, after we've looked at the Sears building or building a new building or having 4 or 5 satellite offices throughout the county, let's say we can't agree on the matter, or we can't find the locations that we feel are best fit for this, would we still be able to just use the building we have for another 2 or 3 years? I mean, I know it has physical challenges, don't get me wrong, but I mean, is that still a possibility if we pass this tonight?
Is that rhetorical, or do you want me to answer it?
No, I want to know. I mean.
So I'm one of 18. That's how I'm going to answer that. I want to defer to Ms. Williams' committee here for a moment, but I'd say when I invited her to be chairperson of the Health Committee, I asked her if she felt she could deal with a fair, honest, frank analysis of our Headington Oaks enterprise. And you know how that came out. We voted unanimously to terminate our position in the marketplace for skilled care. As she has worked all of the responsibilities that health oversees, this is another ongoing responsibility of the county that isn't a choice that we have a health department. We're required to have a health department, and I think we're also required to serve the health department's needs and ambitions to the extent that they meet our policy determinations. So I'm back to answering your question by saying this committee has been tasked with some really tough conversations, and what Sharon has gotten done and her committee members, what they've gotten done for us tonight is one more block got checked in the recommendation as to how to proceed if we are going to proceed with replacing that campus. It's a fix it or build, tear it down, build it back up again. So I think that's probably the best and fairest outline I can give to answer that question for you. Madam Chairperson, I don't know if you want to, you're welcome to add more to that, but I thought the history of what you've been doing on that committee was as relevant as this item is tonight.
Well, it's important to know that, when you mentioned Headington Oaks, I wanted Headington Oaks to stay open. My mother-in-law was there. It was important to me for her to have a home to live. But I went where the facts took me, and the facts took us to the point where we needed to get out of the business. This is the same way with the health department. We are going to go where the facts take us. The facts tell us that the facility is at end of life and that we do need to replace it in some manner. Does that mean we're going to build the building at that location? Possibly. Or it could be some other location. Scott has done a lot of work looking at various locations to see where this could end up. But we're going to look at the demographics, the people we serve. We're going to be looking at a lot of information, and our committee is going to be doing a lot of good, hard work. So we're making some really good decisions on where this campus should be.
Thank you. That was a fair addition. Mr. Salzer?
Like Sharon, I too wanted to definitely see the Headington Oaks nursing home that we had succeed because it was doing such a great job for our people and so forth. I had preferred to take it to the voters. And twice we had done that before, and they responded very favorably to us. So we knew the taxpayers of our county definitely, was strongly in favor of our nursing home for our people. On the other hand, when I would discuss it with our administrator, he told me how much money we needed. And he said we would need, to have a tax of 13 or 14 cents. It was right in that neighborhood. And the state law would not allow us to extend it from 6 cents to that amount. In fact, we could not go past 10 cents. And like Sharon, I too can see the benefit of building a new one to replace this. Whether, as Mr. Elsis said, could it still exist after, for another 2 years and so forth. The recommendation of the people that we asked to look into this for us have indicated to us that here are the problems, and our committee tried to evaluate it. And we think it's going to be the best to replace this health department building. And by doing this, we also can remedy some of the problems of some other departments, such as the coroner, who has some working processes with the health department. And of course, we know how education has come into being with many programs with the health department. So it's going to combine those. Let's face it, our education department has been piecemeal. They have been terribly scattered. And this will, I think, bring a lot of efficiency. Where we put it, that's not what we're voting on tonight. We're voting on, should we replace this building? And I'm voting in favor of replace. I've heard this 3 times now from our administrator on presentations.
Others? Okay, so the motion 10 is on the floor. If there's no more discussion, I would ask that you cast your ballots, please. Cast your ballots, please.
Member Daley?
Aye.
16 ayes, 2 nays. Next is item number 11, suspension of rules.
I get a motion to approve. Thank you, Mr. Fennel, and a second from Mr. Renault. Is that your first second tonight? Yeah. Sorry I haven't recognized you before. I think everyone knows what this item is about, so please cast your ballots.
Member Daley?
Aye.
17 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you. We do have a brief executive session tonight for personnel matters, but before we...
We have one more item.
Oh my God, I thought I just
Item
did
number
that.
12, it's okay. A proclamation extending the declaration of emergency due to COVID-19 in Peoria County, Illinois.
Yes, item 12. Can I get a motion to place that on the floor? Dr. Blair and Mr. Renault on the second. I think we know what this one's about. Any questions? Please vote.
Member Blair, I'm sorry. Member Daley?
Aye.
14 ayes, 4 nays.
Thank you. So I'd like to see first if there's any miscellaneous, so we don't have to come back in session. Mr. Renaud?
Just real quickly, something passed through the consent agenda that I was going to pull only for the reason to give information to our audience about, and that's C5. Just to give an update on where we were with the employees from the auditor's office. It was a contentious topic a couple months ago, and I think we owe it to everybody to know that there's resolution with that. So if Scott maybe could just give us just a quick oversight of what happened with that.
Mr. Sorrell?
Sure, happy to, Mr. Chairman. So as you're aware, when you adopted, the night that you adopted the 2022 budget back in October, Mr. Dillon made a floor amendment, and you adopted that floor amendment that increased at that moment in time the budget in the county administration office so that there would be sufficient funds available in the spending plan so that we could offer positions to all 3 of the represented team members in the auditor's office. We had already budgeted for 1 of the 3, so all 3 were covered. Through the collective bargaining process that's in the agreement, since all 3 are represented, we in essentially one communication both gave them the necessary layoff notice from the current office, but also offered them positions in 3 offices within in other parts of the organization. One of the employees accepted a position in the highway department. One of the employees accepted a position in the coroner's office, and the 3rd team member chose to seek employment elsewhere. And the 2 team members that chose to move to other offices started their new careers with Peoria County on Monday, January 3rd, and initial feedback just since then has been very positive from both those 2 team members and from, in this case, the elected official of the coroner and in his existing staff, and from Amy and her staff at the highway department. So for those 2 team members at minimum, a good conclusion, and obviously the 3rd team member chose to seek employment elsewhere.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Dillon?
I just want to take a quick thank you to Scott and his team, Mark Calvin and his team, and Captain Middlemiss and their team that were hoping to go home on a Friday night and spend time with their family that basically spent the entire weekend here at the courthouse, and for James getting bailiffs since basically to do overnight patrol since our fire sprinklers were down to make sure and guard the building. So I know that's not what they were looking to do when everybody else was going home on Friday. So, and for the public, we had a fire sprinkler break and it flooded out part of the courtrooms. So thanks to the staff for doing that. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Jimmy. Anyone else? All right, can I get
Yes, Chairman Rand.
Yes, Member Daley, you're recognized.
I wanted to recognize and commend our TCAPS director, Becky Spencer. I had a board member in a neighboring county contact me with questions about how to establish an animal shelter. And I sent those questions to Becky. She spent, I'm sure, a considerable amount of time, and he was so impressed with all the information she pulled together for him and offered to contact a county with a more comparable population that has an animal shelter. So I just want to commend her for doing that.
Thank you, Linda. Job well done. All right, can I get a motion to go into executive session for the express purpose of discussing compensation and evaluations? Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum. Thank you, Ms. Groves Allison. Are we ready to vote? Please vote.
Member Daley?
Aye.
Member Duncan. Okay. I'll mark your abstain. It'd be 17 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 abstention.
All right, Mr. Fennel?
I don't know if it's me or not, but it seems like the electronic thing is going faster than it used to. It seems like it's responding quicker. I hope that's good.
That's just the clerk. She's just
I'm getting a little bit
just
better. so-
smoking.
And you guys were voting
All right,
very
so
quickly.
we're going to
so-
stay in this room, right? We're going to close some doors and stay in this room? Okay. We'll take 60 seconds to give folks time who need to step out to step out.
I got the. Okay. I'm going to ask Mike something. Mike?
Linda?